Got the ball rolling with our questions today. My first question is going to be for the film's director, David Yates. David, hello. You have been responsible for the last 4 Harry Potter movies. How does it feel to you, being the one bringing the most successful franchise in movie history to a close?
It's a great privilege to be working with probably the world's best cast and the world's best story. And I feel very, very lucky. And like Daniel, I think one of the things I'm going to miss are the people involved. You know, we've had a tremendous family behind this series of films, behind and in front of the camera. And I think there's something we've all shared that we'll sort of keep, you know, something unique that's between all of us. We've all been to the moon together, as it were. And that's very special, and I think that'll endure for many years, I hope. But it's been a wonderful experience.
I also have a question for Emma and Rupert. I mean, Daniel there speaking about how you've worked together so closely for so long. What's it going to be like not returning to a set of Harry Potter on a yearly basis?
Yeah, I don't think I still have really come to terms with that. After we finished like a year ago now, I have felt a little bit lost without it really, and not really knowing what to do with myself. And it's been such a constant part of my life, and to suddenly have that kind of just suddenly come down to this kind of one film, it's yeah, it is quite sad, and I'm really genuinely gonna miss it and miss everyone.
Yeah, it's funny. We're sort of used to having gaps in between each of the films, usually sort of 5 or 6 months, and then after this last film ended, around that point, I sort of started getting like this itch that was like, okay, I'm ready to go back now. And then I realized I wasn't. And that was really the moment that I had to come to terms with. It's so difficult to process. But I think, Dan, Rupert and I have all moved on to other projects, and we've been working really hard on what's next for us, and we've learned so much during the making of these films, and I think we're all just excited to put it into practice and do more good work.
Thank you. We have a question over here. Thank you.
Hi, I'm from BBC Radio. I just want to ask the director, given that I'm over here, sorry, on the left. Given that this is the most successful film franchise of all time, are you perhaps a little bit disappointed that the Harry Potter films haven't received very much recognition in the Oscars or BAFTA time?
Do you know, I think we've all made peace with that in a way. There are so many things to enjoy being part of this whole series of films. Most of all, the affection of the fans and the fact that there's a global community who follow these stories with great passion. If you go down to Trafalgar Square right now, you'll see a mini Glastonbury of people from all over the world who've been camping out in the rain for the last 3 nights. And that's more of a compensation than lots of trophies. So I think we're cool about that. That's somehow more important, I'd say.
Okay, we've got a question in the front row. I think Rob Driscoll here. Thank you. If you'd take the microphone, Rob.
Thanks. Question for Rupert and Emma again. Which film in this series of 8 would you say provided you with the biggest turning point for your character in terms of child to adult sort of transition, or maybe just learning a big lesson?
I think for me it was these last 2. I think part 1 was where I kind of found I mean, Ron has always been quite a complicated guy, I think, and in part 1 and part 2, and particularly part 1, I think we saw kind of a much more kind of insecure, kind of paranoia and this kind of jealousy and stuff. And yeah, I found kind of these 2 films, I found kind of Ron the most kind of interesting, really. And yeah, just I mean, in the previous films, kind of Ron's been this kind of loyal, just kind of scaredy cat, really. He's kind of screaming all the time, and yeah. So I'm really these 2 films. I think I've felt like I've had the most to kind of get my teeth into.
Similar answer to Rupert. these last two films were the first time I found myself doing something that I really had never done before in my own life or had any way that I could relate to. So, for example, I have no idea what it's like to be tortured, and I have no idea what it's like, trying to play a 20 years older, and what it might be like to say goodbye to my children at a railway station, and just really found myself in positions that I sort of, I can't even imagine what this would be like. So found myself really, really stretched in the last two, and also physically, we did huge amounts of stunts and running around, and so that was a big learning curve for me. And I just wanted to add to the question that was asked to David before. I don't think there are, more. The Harry Potter fans and Harry Potter readers these books are just so loved, and the fans of these books were the most discerning critics. And the fact that they've really embraced the series that we made, and there are pretty much, no complaints. Everyone seems to really, love and think they're true to that. I just don't think there's any better reward than that we satisfied them. So.
I have a question for Robbie Coltrane. Hagrid is clearly one of the many iconic characters. Sorry, Robbie, it's me over here. Right. On this side, you're right. Hello. What are you going to miss most about playing Hagrid and being part of these films?
Oh my goodness. Well, the journey between being a man of 50 and 60 is very different from between 10 and 20. Can I just say that? The great thing about playing Hagrid, I guess, was that Hagrid was a thoroughly good man. And I think it's probably the first time in my entire career I've ever played a thoroughly good man. I played gangsters, prostitutes, transvestites, murderers, everything you can imagine. It's the first time I've ever played a man who was thoroughly good. And a thoroughly good man for 10 years. One of the characters that all the young people completely trusted. Totally trusted, because he was a good chap. So that was a bit of an eye-opener for me. You can imagine how much acting was required there. If you know me. I really enjoyed every minute of it, I have to say. And we were having a laugh the other day about School's Out Forever, that song. And some people think, well, school's out, that's fine, we can go and do what we like. There's also part of you that thinks, well, school's out and something strange and wonderful has kind of gone, to be honest. Am I being terribly sentimental?
You're allowed to be. Gentlemen, if you could hold that mic just in the front row for the moment. There's a lady in the front row here, and then there's a couple of gentlemen in the middle we'll come to. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm from the newspaper in Singapore. This question is for Emma. Could you compare the kiss you had with Ron and the one you had with Harry, Daniel Radcliffe, and would you have liked to kiss Tom Felton?
Should have seen this one coming. Right, so this is really difficult. I've got to try and be diplomatic. Okay. Well, Dan isn't here, so maybe that makes it slightly easier. Well, obviously, kissing Harry for that scene, it's a figment of Ron's imagination and the worst possible thing that he could ever imagine. So the kiss obviously had to be passionate. I was half naked and covered in silver paint, so that was pretty awkward. Kissing Rupert, also awkward. We'd just been soaked by an enormous bucket of water, which was sort of perched, which we had to pretend we didn't know was going to hit us, but we knew was coming, and that was also equally awkward and weird. So both strange situations to be in. Both were complete gentlemen, and it's obviously hard to put our personal history to one side, considering that we did grow up together, but I don't think they'll mind me saying that, once you've done it sort of 4 or 5 times, it gets quite, like kissing gets quite boring, genuinely. So it definitely got easier. And yeah, that's it.
And Tom, who's sitting right here.
Thanks, Jason.
His beautiful girlfriend is sitting in the left-hand corner of the room, so no, I don't think so. My 12-year-old self, absolutely, but my 21-year-old self, no.
Daryl, could we have a question from you? And then there's a gentleman down here with the shirt. Go ahead.
Question for David Heyman. When this project began so long ago and you were faced with putting 7 and in the end 8 films on, has it actually turned out better than you could have ever imagined? In the case that you've kept all the cast together, apart from Richard Harris, sadly. Has it been better than you could ever imagine?
Well, when it began, I had no idea that 10 years on we'd be sitting having this conversation. So at that time it was just, we were making the first film, or when I read the first book, you know, I hoped to make a film, and in my mind, if I was lucky, it might be The Railway Children or Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. I had no idea that it would be what it's become, and in so many ways, it's been better than I could ever have imagined. The journey itself, as David talked about before, the family that was made, and the work that everybody did. It's been, you know, an amazing journey, and one that has been full of surprises, and that I don't think anybody could have expected to continue and end, frankly, in this way.
Just here, thank you.
Hi, I'm Jan from Belgium. I have a question for Emma. How much pressure is on you being a role model for so many children? You will always stay a little bit Hermione for them, I think. So how much pressure is on you to be the good girl?
I think Hermione is such an incredible young woman, and sort of growing up alongside her definitely pushed me, and I think she made me a better person, and she made me work harder just as a result of sort of comparing myself literally with her every day. I feel so privileged to play her, to have got to be her. In terms of the role model thing, I think someone who I admire very much said to me recently, the cleanest way to live as a human being and as an artist is to be true to yourself and always honest, and that's the best way to live, and I will try to do that first and foremost, and then secondly, if that makes me, you know, a role model, then that's great, and it's very flattering. But yeah, it's been amazing, and I feel very lucky to have got to play her and be associated with her. So.
I have a question for everyone, every one of the cast and filmmakers. We will go down the line because that is probably easier and not as confusing. Your favourite line that your character ever said in any of the films that you starred in? I thought we'd start at this end with the wonderful Nick Moran.
Hello, beautiful. That was it. That's the line that I signed. I did when I get autographs. I creeped quite a lot of people out with that, and I was very, very pleased it stayed in the film. So, yes, that's mine.
So creepy.
Well, for me, it was probably one of the first lines that I uttered in the whole series of films, way back in number 1, as Professor Flitwick, Wingardium Leviosa, I think for me would be the one. And it's the one everyone wants me to do when I meet them. So yeah, I often hold little charms classes for little groups of fans. So well, you could do one now if you want. Do you want to do a charms class? You all have your wands with you? Yeah, good. We'll leave it there then.
I don't have many lines, but one of them is. But I like it when she says, "Don't call me Nymphadora," and gets really angry at Mad Eye Moody. And my hair changing colour.
I don't remember hardly anything I ever said in the whole movie. I'd say there's just one word that sums up my feelings of playing the character and trying to make a wand feel like an AK-47 for the whole series of films, which is ridiculous. And my other favourite line is boggart.
Well, I didn't have any lines either, but I do remember thinking, well, this shouldn't be too difficult.
I don't know, I think all Luna's lines are sort of winners. She's always said something funny. But I like "You're just as sane as I am," because it just gives no comfort at all to whoever she says it to.
My favourite line is actually one of Daniel's, because my first day's work, one of my first shots, was walking away from Dumbledore's desk. And I said to Chris Columbus, "Oh, I'd really love an exit line." And he said, "Well, let's go again. We'll shoot something and just make something up." And we didn't tell Daniel, and who was only, waist high. And I turned round to him, unexpectedly to him, and I said, "Let us hope Mr. Potter will always be around to save the day." And he looked up at me and he puffed his chest out and he said, "Don't worry, I will be." Which is pretty impressive for a 12-year-old, and he's stayed that impressive ever since.
I think my favourite line that I got to say, which I haven't seen yet, so I hope it's still in,
might be cut,
is the moment that she stands up in the Forbidden Forest and says, "Dead."
Yeah, we've all been blessed with some great lines, definitely. I thoroughly enjoyed Draco's line when he's being carried away after being attacked by Buckbeak. My father will hear about this. That's one of my, it's one of my favourites for sure.
Producers don't have lines.
Well, the only line that I can remember is, "I can touch you now." That's my favourite line.
You made it early in 1986, actually.
My favourite line is, "I'm going to bed before either of you come up with another clever idea to get us killed, or worse, expelled." And I remember just getting so much joy out of saying that I think I would have been 11 or 12, and it just seemed like the wittiest, cleverest line, and yeah, it was great.
Actually, when you said that, I still remembered the line that I say after that. She needs to sort out her priorities.
Which is
So,
awesome.
yeah. That just really just popped into my head. Yeah, it's hard to think of it. I don't know, it's all kind of a blur. I remember saying, I say bloody a lot. No, I always got a thrill from saying bloody because it was kind of like a rude word. So, yeah.
There's a very good line you say just after Draco blasts Emma in the last film, and you shout as you're chasing Draco, "That's my girlfriend, you numpties."
Yeah.
Which is really sweet.
Oh, I think my favourite one has got to be, "Not my daughter, you bitch." So incongruous. I couldn't believe Mrs. Weasley said it when I read it. I couldn't believe it, so it's fabulous to say.
I guess my favourite was in Diagon Alley in the first one, saying, "You're Harry Potter. You're the one who got away from you know who." My second favourite was in a Bond movie where he stuck a 45 to my head and I said, "Can't you just say hello like anybody else?"
Well, I hardly ever knew my lines in the film anyway. But the ones I did remember. But the one you're going to see tomorrow, my favourite line is when I appear as a ghost on the station platform and I say, "Harry," and I felt like crying. That's my favourite line.
How do I follow that? I think it was just a line that really, for 10 years, really summed up Neville, and it was in number 2, and it was just when he's hanging from the chandelier and he says, "Why is it always me?"
I probably have to choose my first ever line that actually wasn't in the script and only happened on the platform 9 3/4 with "Good luck to Harry." That was the beginning, and I ended on the same set, the end of the journey, so it was a complete cycle.
I've actually got two. The first one would be in the first movie when I sounded like I'd just swallowed a load of helium and said, honestly, woman, you call yourself our mother. So I remember being really excited because if I actually said that to my mum, I'd probably be ducking for a smack. So, and my second one would be mischief managed, which I think sums up the characters pretty well.
I think my favourite line would be in Deathly Hallows Part 1 when Harry and Ginny are just kissing and George creeps right behind them and just goes, morning. It's probably the most uncomfortable moment, I think, for Harry to go through.
Nat says she had no lines, and I've got fewer lines than Nat, so I don't know where that puts me. I had to say Mad Eye's dead, and that was my dad, so that was good fun.
Hi, Paulo from Portugal. This is really a visual masterpiece, so I would like to ask the cast and also the director, how was to work with the Portuguese DP Eduardo Serra? How much did he contribute to the style of these two films? Thank you.
Eduardo's just got a very elegant European style, and we wanted both films to feel very different, basically. So the first one has lots of blue, sort of greyish tones, and the second one has a lot of very rich blood, fire, quite apocalyptic, very grainy. But he was very charming, Eduardo. He doesn't speak much English, so there was a kind of translation issue, but he was always really delightful to have around, and a very, very sweet, gentle man, actually, which suited our family, as it were.
This is a question for Jason, Robbie and Michael. I wonder how you feel that being involved in this series of films has impacted on even your well-established careers.
I'm so glad you called it a series of films. First of all, I get... sorry, Michael. Stepped into the breeze. Because it always upsets me when I hear it called a franchise, because that's when someone sells burgers and someone else goes, I'll have one of those, I'll open a shop selling burgers as well. This is a series of... This is one story, essentially, that's taken 10 years to tell so beautifully with such care. No one's trying to... It seems to me there's not a drop of cynicism in anybody's participation, or mine. And it's an odd thing to be asked how it's affected your career, because I don't have a parallel career. I don't know what it would have been had I not been in this. I'd have been doing something else, I presume. I just know that I've loved doing it. I mean, every second of my participation in the films, and then oddly for me, I don't know if it's true for the other two, I don't normally care what happens after I do my job, which is the acting. I love that part of it. I love being part of the storytelling process, but very unusually for me, I love being part of everything to do with Harry Potter, to seeing how much pleasure, to seeing actually that it's received with as much love as we made it, is a very rare experience, and I've literally not a clue what would have happened to my career else. It's like when people ask me, what would I do if I wasn't an actor? I don't know, you offer me a job, I'll follow you around and make you coffee. I don't know. So no idea, but I'm really glad it's turned out this way. That's my answer.
I have to say, I've just been filming 10 days, nights, with lots of smoke to make it look like it was shot in 1958. So if I sound slightly sexy, ignore me, girls. It really pisses me off. People talk about a franchise. This is about 7 years in a boy's life. And I think that's the way we should see it. As far as my career is concerned, as I said earlier, I've got to play a really, really nice man who gets slightly older over 10 years. How hard would that be? But I think most of us who've been involved in this have been, we're all kind of very emotionally tied into it, I have to say. We're all terribly sad that it's all over. Just kidding. A lot of these people are from France. They don't know when I'm being ironic. So on a personal level, it's been wonderful. And I mean, God save us. If you look at the list of people who have been involved in these films in the last 10 years, the directors, the cameramen and all that, it's been an absolute, it's been an extraordinary collection of people who have all been stuck in the same place off and on for 10 years, and I think we're all just desperately proud, aren't we? Aren't we? Yep. Yes, we're all terribly proud.
Well, I'm so happy to have been offered a wonderful part in a film that's lasted 7 years. I couldn't have believed that before. before. I've never had that long time before. And I really enjoyed it thoroughly. I'm very grateful. And they also give you time off to make other films.
Yeah, they do.
I've made, 3 films, and they oblige and just let you have the time off, which is remarkable. Thank you.
Yes, I have to say that they've been very, very generous about giving us time off.
Yeah.
Thanks, Davey.
Yeah, I had a couple of films off. I could have done without it, Frank. I had a year off at one point. It was too much.
I'd like to come to the middle of the hall now. There's a man in the third row, and a microphone is coming to you right now, sir. There you go. If you'd pass it along in just a moment. Go ahead.
Hi, my question is for Ivana. Luna is such a well-loved, standout character. How does it feel to leave her behind? And what is your plan now once the Harry Potter machine dies down? Are you going to remain in acting or do something else?
Yeah, well, I think I really feel so lucky to have played Luna because she was always my favourite character. I think she's like such a really good role model because she's perfect, but she's not trying to be perfect. She is herself. Sorry, I always do this. I forget what you said in the rest of the question. Sorry. Oh, but there was something else.
And what you plan to do once Harry Potter dies down?
Yeah, I don't know. I am distraught that this is over. I've been just obsessed with this book since I was 8, so I don't really know what I was before that or what's going to come next. So I've heard they're opening a Harry Potter experience thing where Leavesden was, so I'm free as a tour guide. That's all I'm happy to do.
That's great. In the same row, there's a gentleman about 5 in there. Please, if you could take that. Yeah, gentleman with the glasses. Yes, microphone coming to you now. Thank you.
Question to our fans. You are not only a bad guy, you are the worst we can imagine. Did you have reactions with people like this so that they really didn't take it as a role, but that some people told you on the street, I hate you, or writing things like that?
I had a letter the other day from a man who was shocked at the narcissism of Voldemort and was disturbed. But mostly I don't get recognized because I retain my own nose and I have some hair. But it's been a wonderful part to play, great high-definition villain, and I've loved it, and loved working with everyone here.
I have a question for Warwick, because you play 2 roles in this film. Obviously, you're both Grip Hook and the Professor. What was that like for you, swapping between the 2 roles?
Well, fortunately, we didn't have to do it within the same day, because that might have been tricky, because both roles require an extensive amount of prosthetic makeup. But it was a pleasure. I mean, I almost felt a bit greedy in a way, taking the 2 parts, but Flitwick was one I'd established, over the course of all of the films, and then to be asked to fulfill the role of Grip Hook was amazing, and it was such a terrific experience working closely with David in bringing the character to the screen and just really giving him some depth, and hopefully that comes across in the film, because he certainly was a lot of fun to play, and always playing a slightly villainous character is always the one that you want as an actor, certainly, fingers crossed people won't spot that it is indeed the same person under both guises. But the advantage is that as one character dies in the film, you're always there as the next one. So that was quite handy for me. So I'm there until the bitter end in one form or another.
Okay, there's a lady in the front row here, and then we can get the microphone to a couple of gentlemen just on this side. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions to Emma, please. What was the sort of best memory you'd like to take away from the whole experience, and what was the most challenging thing? And what does the Hermione character mean to you?
Oh my goodness. Best memory. I think getting to do that, getting to work with Helena Bonham Carter, both when she tortured me and when we got to work together with her playing me, essentially. And we had so much fun, and I just really enjoyed working with her, and that was great. Your second question was, I'm sorry. Most challenging? Gosh. Well, I was lucky in a way because the last two films were really challenging, but particularly with this last one, I was so emotional anyway. You know, about how I felt about it all ending, and the film deals with loss, and I was also going through my own kind of like grieving and saying goodbye to people, and so having to say goodbye to Dan and so having to say goodbye to Harry, there were all of this was kind of weirdly mirror imaging everything that was happening, so I was able to bring a lot of that to the role, and that made my life quite easy, really, in a way. So lucky on that front. And then what does Hermione mean to me? What doesn't she mean to me? She's been like, I think of her like a sister, or like someone that I don't know. She feels so real to me. And when people ask what I'll miss most, of course I will miss the people, but I will actually just miss being her. Getting to come into work every day and be this girl that lives in this magical, amazing world, and get to go on all the adventures that she goes on. That part's quite devastating. I'll miss wandering around in Stuart Craig's sets and, you know, and having these two as friends, and, you know, it's been pretty great, so, yeah.
Just before we go back to the floor, I'd like to ask James and Oliver, I mean, you're the jokers on screen, but when the cameras aren't rolling, who are the cast members who are the jokers? Who got up to the most japes?
He did. I don't know, really. We do like to have a joke, actually. I think playing these characters from an age when you're learning who you are must have had something to do with it. But I mean, but Rupert's quite in on jokes, what goes on, and pranks and everything what goes on.
I think we're always lucky, because if we ever did a practical joke and got caught, we could just say that we're practicing for our roles. So it was quite fortunate playing Fred and Georgie that way. But I think everyone of the cast throughout the 10 years pulled at least one practical joke on another, especially Michael.
No, not me. He's telling lies.
I have two questions for David Yates, and one is, what is your personal explanation about this so big success of Harry Potter saga? And the second question is, if you think that Harry Potter can have maybe a prequel. Thank you.
Wow. Many reasons these movies are so successful. It's the beautiful books that they're based on that have this global fan base. This eclectic series of characters. I mean, Jo's very generous in creating this world. And she's given us so many characters that are so vivid that there's kind of someone for everybody, I think. Also the fact that the world offers us something bigger. And Emma just put it so beautifully, something bigger and more extraordinary than our ordinary lives. And I think there's a sort of sense of wish fulfillment in that storytelling. And there are some very universal storytelling themes, the fight against good and evil, and the power of love and faith, and the feeling of loss. And death is a big feature in the movies too. There's an interesting YouTube documentary made, A Life in a Day, and I was talking to Liza Marshall, who produced that. And I said, what kind of films did you get from people all over the world? And she said, amazingly, a lot of these films that were contributed were about death. People are interested in death, and death as an issue isn't really something that figures in the Hollywood sort of rule book of how you make a popular film. But death is a theme that runs through Jo's books, and the sense of loss and the sense of dealing with loss. So I think there are, you know, many reasons why these films are successful. And will there be a prequel? I think, you know, Jo's got such an extraordinary imagination. I don't know how you put a stop on that. If suddenly it must pour out of her all the time. But I think personally, and I'm sure if she writes more, the world will be, you know, very happy to consume and read. But I think there's a time and a place for certain stories and certain experiences. And I think this series of books and this series of films sit uniquely in a period of time. And I think it would be a shame, really, to try and recreate or continue them. I think they sit perfectly where they are, and it seems fine that they're just there.
Just to be clear, Jo has no plans to write another book. She may another story. She may write things connected to Harry Potter, like she's doing Pottermore, the website. She's not. I don't see her. She's not going to write another book on another Harry Potter. You know, Harry at the age of 23 at business school. I just don't.
That would be a franchise.
Bestseller.
Harry in the Organic Bread Factory.
We've got a couple of questions over here now. The gentleman with the check shirt, and then if we could move back to the gentleman with the black shirt, just a couple of rows behind. Thank you.
Hello, Juan Carlos Garcia from Mexico for Tom. I would like to know which was the best and the worst part of working in Harry Potter as not the good one, and what are your plans on music and some other stuff?
Best and worst things. Best has to be really having the opportunity to work with not only these fantastic people, but all the crew that obviously can't be here, and everyone really that we've worked with over the last 10 years. It definitely is like a mini family, excuse the cliche, but it is kind of true. The worst thing, and there really aren't many, to be honest with you, but if I had to pick one thing, dyeing my hair blonde was slightly arduous after 10 years. Even though it seemed to build some sort of superhuman resistance, it still seems to be okay. So I'm not suffering too badly. But yeah, that got slightly painful after 6 or 7 years of it, to be honest with you.
But you could hold websites.
What's that?
Devoted to how gorgeous you are.
Bless you, Robbie.
So
I said no years ago, all right? Let's just leave it.
Haven't you got one, Robbie? Robbie spent a lot of time looking at those websites.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, just, you know, I've been lucky enough to obviously been working with these guys for the last 10 years, and fingers crossed I get to work with some of them again over the next 10 or so. I've really sort of cemented a passion for filmmaking over the last few years, and I hope to continue to do so. Thank you.
Dominic Corrie from New Zealand here. My question is for the three Davids. This is the biggest film series of all time, and it's British. How can the British film industry capitalise on its success to keep these kind of films going that have such a British sensibility to them?
Well, I honestly don't know. I mean, it's taken since the beginning of cinema history to find a franchise, well, not a franchise, a saga like this, where you can tell a single story over multiple books and films. And if anyone has another one in their back pocket, I'd love to get to it before anybody else does. We've left a legacy, I think, with the English, or the British visual effects industry, which didn't exist in quite the same way before Harry Potter. From the second film onwards, very complicated work that would normally be given to our American counterparts has stayed in England, and they now send their work here. So that's one thing we've left behind. And Leavesden Studios, actually. Leavesden is going to remain. Warner's have bought it. They're developing it as a slightly less leaky studio. And it will be there, hopefully, for a long time, and they will bring a lot of work to it to make their purchase worthwhile, which should benefit the industry as a whole.
I think the remarkable thing that David Heyman did and Joe Rowling right at the beginning was to say this will stay in Britain and it will be British. And it's created such an infrastructure and such an industry, and it will be sorely missed. It's going to create a huge hole. And beautiful things have happened. Stuart Craig's art department, for example, has a way of bringing on sort of young trainees. It's been a mini industry employing hundreds and thousands of people, in fact. So it's in all our interests in this creative community to find the next one. But I think lightning doesn't strike twice, and it'll be very hard to follow the kinetic power of Harry Potter. But believe you me, there are no shortage of people looking for the next big possibility, I think.
I think that a combination of the quality of people working in front of and behind the camera in this country, which I think are as good as, and better than anywhere in the world, along with, frankly, the tax break, and the fact that London and the UK is a fantastic place to be, means that filmmakers and studios will continue to make films in this country. In terms of what we generate ourselves that isn't from without, but is from within, I think, as David said, lightning doesn't strike twice. And I think it's really one of the reasons why I think Harry Potter works is it is culturally specific, but it's thematically universal. It's really about things that, it's about love and death and loss and friendship and loyalty and good versus evil. We all know characters like Harry, Ron, and Hermione. We've all had teachers like Dumbledore and Snape and Lupin. We haven't known too many Voldemorts, I hope. But these are people who are not, yes, they're British, but I think they are relatable to people all over the world. And I think one of the things we can do is find stories that have that universality. Because we have, I mean, you look at, Narnia and Lord of the Rings, and those are the fantasy ones, but, we have in this country generated and written novels and plays and television series and films that have been seen the world over. And I just think we need, we can and we will do it. It's no question.
I have a question for everyone, actually. It's visually stunning films, no doubt. My question is, what is your favorite prop from the films? Or it could be a costume, something you wore, something you saw. I'll start again with you, Nick.
I was very lucky working with a costume with Jenny, because I worked with her before on something else. So we sort of ever so slightly changed some of the ideas and I got to be a punk version of Adamant. I mean, that was brilliant. Who doesn't want to do that? So it was the leather jacket and having a holster with a wand in it. That's pretty cool. Was anyone else have a holster? Rock. There you go. I had a holster. So that's it. My holster and leather jacket. I've come for my son. That was it. So it was Adamant in a sort of post-cyberpunk period.
I'm probably going to say what the majority of people here will say, but definitely having the wand, really. I mean, it's something that became very special because you were only ever given it just before you were to do a scene, and then they were taken swiftly off you straight away, so they didn't end up on eBay. So, you felt very special when you had it, and yeah, just... and also the costumes as well. I mean, the immense amount of detail in these costumes that, the movie-going audiences never really get to appreciate fully. But when you're wearing the costume, you feel like the character. They feel lived in these clothes, and they very much inform you of that character. And they did have a wand pocket as well inside. Not a holster, but, a little wand pocket was inside every costume, so you always had somewhere to stow the wand. So, yeah, my wand is a definite favourite of mine, certainly.
I was going to say that.
Sorry.
I'd say maybe my broom, because it's a bit like the wand. It's specific to you, and mine was like really manky and it had loads of bits of purple in it, and I like that.
For me, at the end of Prisoner of Azkaban, when I say goodbye to Harry, I do two things. I fold up the Marauders map and I put all my stuff in my closet. And they weren't special effects, they were shot in camera. And the Marauders map folded up by a series of little invisible threads that happened on 2 or 3 takes. And I just thought the genius of someone who created that was, I thought summed up to me the creative aspects of the special effects designers on the film, that they didn't rely on it being a special effect, but they actually worked out a way of folding a map 8 ways by pulling little threads. So, thank you.
Unfortunately, I wasn't allowed to dress up or have a wand. I was in the portrait. I did have a costume, it's true, and it was lovely.
Mine would be the lion house, Luna's lion house, because I think that the best thing about playing Luna is that when you're wearing her clothes, they're kind of the clothes that no one would wear, in their right mind. So you get out of yourself, you're very free. And the lion hat was sort of that intensely, like, I can't care what anyone thinks of me, I'm wearing a lion on my head. And it was very light and deceptively light and comfortable, and I kept forgetting I was wearing it and people looking at me, I was like, what, It was really fun. Yeah, I should take that home.
I would have said the wand, but it feels very unoriginal now. But I had that lovely wand inside a cane, which had a very, very heavy snake head. And the very first scene, one of my favourites, which was cut, of course, as in many of my favourites, I smacked Tom very hard on the knuckles when I'd just been handed it. I didn't quite have the weight of it right. I think it really did some damage, and this poor little toddler looked up at me, and I think he thought I was acting, and he had to react. And so instead of going, ow, can you not do that? And I cracked his knuckle very hard with it, and it was the beginning of a beautifully tortuous relationship between Draco and Lucius. But in fact, my favourite thing is the wig, because I'm a very lazy actor, and so every time I put it on, in order to keep it straight, they kept on telling me to tip my head back, because otherwise I was eating it all the time. And if I tipped my head back, I was looking down my nose at people, and there was an instant character, and I didn't have to do any work. So I quite like that.
Well, I only have got one pop, the wand, but the favourite thing to look at, which you never saw, was if you'd go upstairs, if there was a quiet moment in filming, they used to have this huge office, the art department, and the art department would design these tiny little models of all the set. And you could walk through this room, and the detail on the room was incredible, and you could actually lean down and look through the windows, and you could see sort of down staircases and through corridors. And they had the most extraordinary world up there. So of the most beautiful objects that I came across on Harry Potter, that would be them.
Yeah, I'd like to confirm you were a little heavy-handed with the snake head thing, for sure, Jason. I've resented you ever since. Yeah, I've been holding it back, yeah. Obviously, the wands were really cool, and the broomsticks were kind of obvious. I really like my suit. Draco was not one for casual dressing, and he seemed to be in a black suit 24/7, even to bed, I think he wore it. So yeah, it was actually the first suit I ever had that fit me. So it was nice to have that. I felt very sharp in that, for sure.
Can I interrupt just really quickly? Forgive me. In a true Neville Longbottom moment, why is it always me? I really need the loo. Okay? So I'm going to say, mine's the Sword of Gryffindor. That's my favourite. And I'll be back by the time these people are finished. Is that all right?
Go, man.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, I'm going to do the same. The flying car.
Is this a...
Boys, they always go in pairs, don't they?
Speak very slowly. Like David Barron, I was in a portrait, no props, some clothes. I was a Puritan. I don't know what they were thinking. But in terms of, there are so many props and things on Harry Potter, but I suppose if I could take one away, it would be the Time Turner, which is just a thing of...
You did.
There are people from Warner Brothers here, David.
No, he didn't.
Yeah, but the Time Turner, for many, many reasons.
Well, I liked my wand, and I had some teeth, bad teeth. But I really can talk about a moment of liberation to do with my costume, because it was an irritating costume to wear. It was too long, and sometimes I would trip over it. And underneath, I started off wearing tights. And the gusset of the tights kept dropping down between my thighs. And this made it very difficult to walk with any kind of dignity. So eventually I said to my dresser, a lovely young man called Neil, I said, you're going to have to cut these tights, and I'm going to have garters at the top. So I enjoyed then having this garter belt on each leg. And sometimes when the stunt team are getting too macho, I would tease them with my inner thigh.
People will never think of Voldemort in the same way.
You know he's got suspenders and garters on underneath. Brilliant. My favourite, well, David Heyman already stole my answer, so I'm going to steal maybe Michael's answer. I really would love to own a pensieve. The idea of being able to walk around in other people's memories and understand how they came to be the way that they are or the person that they are, I think would be an incredible tool for the world as a whole. You know, it'd be amazing to walk around in Hitler's childhood and see what made him the way he is. And, you know, I just think coming to understand Snape was just such an amazing part of the last movie, and So yeah, I'd like one of those.
I would actually probably pinch Hermione's bag, because Hermione's bag is this amazing thing. You can put anything in it. Absolutely.
Her Mary Poppins bag.
And it's an amazing bag. It holds lots and lots of things. And I'm traveling with my wife at the moment. And we're about to go to New York, to the premiere in New York, and we have so much luggage. I would just tip it all into Hermione's bag, and it would make it so much easier.
Oh, well, I loved my costume, and particularly the padding, because it gave me the most fabulous shape with enormous bosoms. And it kept me really warm in winter and was rather absorbent in summer. So it was absolutely a little worrying at King's Cross with the pigeons because it was made of birdseed, the bosoms. But apart from that, yeah, I loved it. That was my favourite.
Well, in the first episode of Potter, they explained to me that Hagrid wasn't actually, strictly speaking, allowed to do magic. Because he kind of failed the exam in 1842 or something. In fact, it probably was in 1842. So they said, well, you can use this. And I'm supposed to be playing an 8'6" giant. They gave me a pink umbrella, which Audrey Hepburn could have been carrying in 1952, you know, about this size. And I lit the fire and put the pigtail in the wee bum bum. And that was my favorite thing. And I didn't see it for years until... Remember when we were in New York, near the exhibition in New York, there it was. I'm thinking, my dear old pink umbrella.
Yeah.
And they made a model of me with this, it was 8'6" guy with an umbrella. That's a nice bit of irony, that, isn't it? Yeah. You think you'd have something that looked like stainless steel. Yes. You know, Chihuahua, bite this bitch.
Yeah.
Or something. But there you go. That would be my favorite prop.
Well, I had the usual props one, but I had a little bag I made myself at a belt to keep my fags and lighter in under my costume for the quick nip out for a fag. And I also had a very long white beard, which I would have my sausage and chips for lunch. And then she wouldn't take the beard off, which annoyed me. So I used to feed chips into it. I'd feed fried chips into my beard to annoy the makeup department.
I remember that.
My main memory.
The other thing you did, which I'd like to tell the public about, is you parked your Cadillac outside my trailer so I couldn't open the door. Your Ferrari, because we're both car men, right? And I said, I can't quite open my door properly. Michael said, that's because I brought my Ferrari in to humiliate you. Remember that?
Stay in your trailer.
First of all, fellow cast and crew members, gathered journalists, and indeed the world, I apologise for my loo break there. That's very desperate. Yeah, my favourite thing, the Sword of Gryffindor, I think, because it's Neville, really. I mean, everyone wondered why he was in Gryffindor from the very beginning. You know, they didn't think that he was going to amount to anything, but only a true Gryffindor can pull that out of the hat. And it's a sword, so it's just really cool. I felt like a Jedi for a bit, and I always wanted to be that when I was younger. So, yeah, definitely the Sword of Gryffindor.
For me, for my character, it's really important. Brought Ginny into the arena and into Voldemort was Tom Riddle's diary. And it probably, in terms of the storyline now, at least I was a part of destroying one Horcrux, so that was good.
As many props as were in the Weasley Wizarding Wheezers shop, and there's thousands of them, it's an incredible set. My favourite prop would be my dyed ginger hair for 10 years, because it gives you a completely new perception on the world and how people view you. In a good way. But it got you really into the character, and kind of your friends knew when you were filming again. So I'm going to go with the ginger hair, and it made us part of the Weasley gang. So that was pretty cool to be a part of.
I'm going to strongly disagree with my brother there, saying that's my favourite part of the whole film. I'm going to be boring and say my wand, just because it's fantastic, really cool.
I want Mrs. Weasley's bodysuit as well. Can we go halves on that? I'll take it. I'm not telling you why. I love it.
And I think we can go back to the floor. There's a gentleman with a check shirt on the fourth row, if you'd like to go, sir, and then we'll come to the front.
Torbjörn Ek, Swedish newspaper Aftonbladet. A question for David Yates.
You've been working very close with Jo on this film, where she was a producer. How much did she actually participate in making the film? Would you consider her a future film producer in other films? Or what else would you want her to do now the Harry Potter era is over?
Jo Rowling is an incredible partner in these films, obviously, and but she keeps a discreet distance. Ultimately, she signs off the screenplay, and if she has any issues, she communicates them and lets us know what she's happy with, what she's not happy with, and then she's there at the end of the telephone if we need her, basically, and then she'll watch the movie when it's finished. It's the perfect relationship for a group of filmmakers, because she's very enthusiastic about what we do. She always supports it. She's not very territorial about her world in the sense that we take liberties often. We trim things out, we add things, and she always supports that. She understands the complexities of adaptation, and so it's a fantastic relationship. But she's not particularly hands-on, and she's not around all the time. We probably, in the making of one of these films, we'll probably see her 2 or 3 times, absolute tops, and that's usually at the beginning and end of the filmmaking process. But this is her world, you know, and we're interpreting it, and so she's there to guide us if we need it, and it's always nice to know that she's on the end of the phone, as it were.
This is a question for Fines. Maybe you can answer it for all your colleagues. As an actor, I could imagine it's easy, or you get used to how to handle a gun or a sword. But how long do you have to practice to use a magic wand that it looks sexy and different and cool?
I'm delighted you think so. Well, we had, Michael and I once, we had wand lessons, didn't we, Michael?
Yeah, we had 2 years of wand lessons.
We had special wand coaching. That was true.
Yeah,
in the first film that we did with David, he brought in a young man, a dancer, who taught us different wand action. Yeah. And it became imbued in us, I think.
Mine were a bit more camp than yours.
Yeah.
bit light.
Sometimes, yeah. Then you addressed that.
Yeah. I'd been outed.
Now, when I first was discussing the part, I talked to the design department about creating a little hook, or like a bird's claw on the end, so it could rest in an open hand, which I quite liked.
Okay, and the last question, I think, from the front row here. Thank you.
It's a question for Rafe again. When you're creating what could be the ultimate movie villain, and your face is hidden beneath layers of prosthetics, how do you strike the balance between making it not too frightening so that you scare off the kids, but frightening enough so that you make an impact?
I rely on a great director. Seriously, I think for this, it's a high-definition villain. It demands, I think, a degree of sort of theatricality, if you like, and then also you want to find the balance of nuance and the sense of an inner life. And I have to say, I think that working with initially Mike Mule and with David, there were 2 great directors who helped me. I hope find the balance. You don't. And people say it's frightening, and if that's the case, that's great. I think you should be.